Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Sparrow Quilt Company Stash Busters series. My name is Bradie Sparrow, and I am here today to hopefully inspire you to get creating beautiful things. We've gotten a couple of messages and emails just asking us what exactly the Stash Busters series is about. This idea originally was born in early January, or actually late December. We wanted to inspire quilters to use up what they have, or even just inspire quilters to get quilting again. A lot of us have been quilting over the years, and sometimes we just get off track. We get too busy. Life gets in the way of all this fun creating of beautiful items. And so my goal really is to just help you get back to sewing and help you get back to using up the things that you've already accumulated over the years. We quilters have a habit of stashing, and by that I mean buying 9 meters of our favorite fabric and keeping it and putting it into every possible quilt we can. So the truth is that we invest a lot of money into these quilts, but until they are finished and bound, they really aren't a usable item. So we hope that by sharing these free patterns and tutorials and tips and tricks, we stream live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here on Facebook, and that's at 10:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We hope that by sharing all this free content with you, that we will inspire you to get back to sewing, quilting, and creating. And if you just want to join in and watch the fun, that's okay too. You're certainly more than welcome to do so. Well, I'm so sorry that I missed you all on Monday. I was a little bit half dead, but I'm feeling much better now. That darn tonsillitis just kind of messes with the plans. But anyways, I'm so happy to be back. And I just want to share with all of you how much it means to me when you guys leave me all these comments and stuff. When I was feeling really rotten on Monday afternoon and feeling like I had abandoned you all, I went back through some of the videos and just read all of your wonderful and positive comments. And it just lifted me out of a dark place. I had a little cry. And I just want to thank you all again and let you know how grateful I am that all of you enjoy watching our show and that you're willing to put up with me for 90 minutes 3 times a week. I'm so grateful for you all. So thank you for that. You all made me feel a lot better in my whiny period of sickness. So love to you all. What's that? Oh, thank you, everybody. My daughter, Landon, our oldest daughter, is here. She's my little producer, and she shares all your comments and questions with me. So please don't hesitate. I want you to leave those comments. I want you to leave those questions. It makes for more information for all of our viewers. You know, if there's something that you ask and it answers a question for another person, then it's helping more than one of you, right? And there's always someone else out there too who's afraid to ask, but the question is in their mind as well. So go ahead and ask those questions, because we love having those questions, and it makes for more information to share here on the show. So go right ahead, leave those comments and questions. If you're just joining us for the first time, we are working on the Almost Houndstooth pattern, and that's a free pattern that you can find at sparrowquiltco.com. So you just go to the website and you click on my face. It'll take you to a new page where you enter your email address, and then that will send you an email with the pattern attached, and then you can follow along in the fun as well. Oh, that's so sweet. My kids don't want to spend 90 minutes with me, so I appreciate that. Sorry, Landon is willing to spend 90 minutes with me. Frequently, in fact. Although I do have to pay her to do that, so. Noted. All right, just being funny. So do we have the screen split so that I can show stuff over here, Miss L? Okay, awesome. So this is the block that we are working on. It is kind of a 4-patch, kind of a fancy 4-patch. This way a little bit.
There, now the bottom edge is just in this, so that's your space.
Okay.
Well, from the tape to the bottom edge.
Oh, okay, so am I better to bring it more this way? All right. So this is the block that we're working on today. You can see it's kind of a fancy 4-patch, really, which is so simple. The quilts that we share here, I try to keep them really simple so that even a beginner can participate. And what I really like about this one is that the piecing is quite large, so I can use some fabrics in this quilt that maybe I didn't want to cut up into tiny little pieces. I can showcase some of my bigger prints that are a bit showy and would kind of lose their effect if I cut them into smaller pieces. So that's what I really like about this one. And you can do this in any type of fabrics. You don't have to do it modern like I have. You can go with something a bit more traditional. You can go with something totally scrappy. You absolutely do not have to use one line of fabric. In fact, you could go with just two fabrics if you wanted to. That's typically how a houndstooth is done, but this isn't quite a traditional houndstooth, is it? So I did show you last Friday how to piece this block, but I'm just going to do that again, and then you're really just going to keep me company while I do some chain piecing today. I am going to show you one block right off the bat, and then I am going to go into my chain piecing mode, more of a assembly line type of piecing. Today, what should we give away today, Al? As you guys know, if you've been here before, we love to give stuff away. And I usually give away some of my tools that I'm using during the show. Any preference today? Landon is suggesting we give away a rotary cutter, which is always a great prize. So how do you enter to win the prize? You're going to share this video. If you're not familiar with sharing, you're going to look beneath the video. You'll see the option to like, comment, and share on the far right. So go ahead and share this, and then you will be entered into the draw. So to make one of these almost houndstooth blocks, our requirements are 1 5-inch square of print. We're going to need a 5-inch square of our background fabric. We're going to use a 4.5-inch square of our print and a 4.5-inch square of our background fabric. And lastly, we're going to need two, really reaching today, 2 times 2.5-inch squares. Okay, so for now, what you're going to do is set aside the 2.5s and set aside the 4.5s. And I'm going to start with my 5-inch background fabric. And I'm going to draw a line from tip to tip on the back side of my fabric. And it's white, so it really doesn't matter if it's the back side or the right side. I can't tell which is which anyways. But I want to put this in the area where you can see it. What I like to do, the tip of my marker is a little bit fat. So I make sure that my ruler is over just enough that I can actually touch that tip. And so then I know that I can easily draw a line from tip to tip, and that will be accurate. If I line up my ruler right point to point, then my line will be slightly off center. And I don't want it to be. I want it to be right down the middle. I don't like that. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this square with right size facing on top of my 5-inch square. And now I'm going to go over to the machine and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch on this side from end to end. And I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch on this side. I'm trying to hide my nails today. I ripped them all off while I was sick and they are not pretty. Ugly, ugly. They didn't see any of that? Okay, I'll do it again, guys, I promise. All right, so now I'm going to move over here to my sewing machine. And I am lining up that marked line with my 1/4 inch foot. And I am going to get sewing. All right, so I always like to hold my tails to the back of the machine, my thread tails that is, that allows for the beginning to go smoothly. I don't know about you, but sometimes it seems like the beginning of my stitching kind of gets pushed down into the needle plate, and then I am trying to detangle an ugly mess. So I hold those tails to the back, and that just allows me to start and end smoothly. If you saw our episode last week there with Kathy Strawson, she was talking about leaders and enders, and I believe that's a trick that she learned through Bonnie Hunter at Quiltville. Sorry, my mind blanked out for just a moment there. You know, fruit fly brain. And that is just a piece that you start with that isn't actually part of your quilt, and then you end with an ender as well. And a lot of people will complete an entirely different project with these beginners and enders, and that's a nice way to get lots done, isn't it? For me, I just hold those tails, get myself going in the right direction. I never, ever, ever backstitch. Well, I shouldn't say never, ever. If you watched my binding episode, you noticed that I probably did some backstitching there. It's already so far away, I can't remember. All right, so have we got a split screen there, miss? We're split? Okay, so now you can see my marking line down the center, and you can see the 2 lines that I just stitched. Now I'm going to cut directly on that marking line. And so I am cutting with my ergonomic rotary cutter, and I am cutting with my blue squaring ruler. And that is going to create 2 half square triangles that look like that. Now when I press these, I'm going to press with the print fabric on top, set that thread, and then I will open it up so that I am pressing with my seam allowance towards the print fabric. And I am just lifting and pressing. My pressing surface is called a roundabout. It's got a cool turntable base, and so I can rotate my project if I need to. That's really helpful when I'm squaring blocks, which I will do right now. So I'll leave that over there as my pressing surface, and then I'll show you how I use my, I'm catching on to stuff here. Getting smarter as I go, guys. All right, so I'm just gonna kind of center that. I like to use the 45-degree angle lines to line up my seam. Not that it's necessary, but it makes my control issues feel a little bit more like they're in control. So I always start with my 1s up in the top right corner, and my block ideally is going to be 4.5 inches square. Wow, I'm really trimming a lot today. Is that right? 4.5? Oh, no, I was lining up to 4.25. Okay, so again on my ruler, there's also a 45-degree angle line, so I've got that lined up with the piecing that I did, and that lets me know that I am truly squaring this, not, and that my seam is going to go directly out of each corner, because that's what I want when I look at my finished blocks. I want it to be as accurate as possible. And I'm really just trimming off a hair, like literally, it's a very small amount. So I'm going to trim the right side and the top side, and I'm going to move those little bits out of the way before I move my ruler. There we go. Got my little cup for all my scraps and mess. So now I'm going to lift that ruler carefully, and I can just turn the whole cutting mat instead of lifting the block, and then that just keeps things more accurate. Again, I am lining up that 45-degree line with my seam line, and I've got my 4.5-inch line lined up on both the left and the bottom side, and I just have a hair worth of fabric to trim away there on the right-hand side and the top side. Now what's nice about this ergonomic rotary cutter is I can sit while I'm cutting, and that's a good thing today because I'm here, but I'm still a little bit tired. All this healing my body's trying to do. I'm going to trim up both of these at the same time. And get those ready to go. That is a blue clover marking pen. Those are available in both a thin tip and a fat tip. I typically use a thin tip, but I couldn't find one. So today I am using the chubby one. That's okay because I'm chubby too. I've had 10 children. How can I not be a little bit chubby? Okay, so again, I'm lining up that 45-degree angle, and I've got my 4.5 lined up with the left side and the bottom side. And it doesn't even look like I'm taking anything off on this side, but I'm going to do it anyways. Okay, so now I've got those two pieced. And what I'm going to do next is now I'm going to bring back my 2.5-inch squares, and I'm going to sew them onto each corner here. But first I will draw a line down the center from corner to corner, just like I did on the bigger white squares. Can they see what I'm doing here, Elle? Good. Okay, so I can reach my point, so I know it's good to go ahead and draw that line. And that one's going to go there. And then we'll try another one. Dot at my points, and then I can draw another line. This here? Yep. That's part of the cutting mat. So I probably, well, no, there's no marks on the half. And I was cutting my blocks down to 4.5. So I could have done bang on 4. Well, I could have done bang on any whole number, but the half point wasn't marked. So that's why I had to bring in my blue squaring ruler. But the great thing about the cutting mat that I'm using and the turntable mat that I'm using is that the markings on the mats themselves are accurate, which isn't the same with every type of cutting mat in the industry, I guess. So these ones are really reliable. You could actually rely on the cutting mat markings. I hope that made sense. My fruit fly brain is especially bad today. So we're going to line up this outer corner. And now I'm going to sew directly on the line this time. We're not going to be 1/4 inch off. We're going to be right on that line, okay? And we'll line up this one too so I can take it over and feel more productive. So I'm doing 2 at one time. So I was very, very excited this weekend because my husband, Matt, if you've been following us for any length of time, you may know that Matt used to do a lot of long arm quilting, and he went under the name Man Quilter. So recently, he set up a long arm in my sewing room, which is awesome, I have to say. And he loaded up this quilt that I made for our little 7-year-old. I almost said 6, but he is 7. And he quilted it up. And then afterwards, he was trimming the quilt up, and he accidentally butchered some of my quilt blocks underneath it. I was a little bit unhappy at first, and then I realized, Bradie, you have so much of that fabric. Don't even try to be upset over that. And it's another one of my fabrics that I've had in my stash forever. It's called Little Black Dress, and it was made by Basic Gray for Moda. So that made me wonder, how old is your oldest fabric? I want to know. You know, we have these fabrics that we've just been cherishing and maybe borderline hoarding. And I'm always curious to know what the oldest pieces that you have in your stash. Some of us have fabrics from like the 1930s, maybe some good old feed sack prints or that sort of thing. But I'm always curious to know what everybody's oldest fabric in their stash is. So give me a comment there and let me know what your oldest fabric is. Okay, I'm doing too much talking and not enough sharing of information. So now I have got my little white square sewn onto the corner, and what I'm going to do now is just trim a 1/4 inch outside of that line that I've just stitched on. And then that is going to create this little portion right here. And then after that, we can literally put the block together. It is that fast and easy.
Laura says over 20 years old. Mary says over 40.
That's awesome. I've only been quilting since Annika turned 4 in 2006. So I started quilting in 2005, which isn't a really long time. So for me to have fabric from 2008, which is really when I started to accumulate. Before that, I just made a project out of everything I purchased. I wasn't a big stasher at that point. 40 years. Wow, that's awesome.
Laura has a quilt top that's over 100 years.
Ooh, that's pretty precious. Laura, was it made by someone in your family, or was it just a find that you got somewhere in your travels? Okay, so this time I'm going to flip it over again, and I'm going to have my print on top when I press it, and then that way I can press my seam towards the print. Sorry, I'm being nosy. We actually do run a real quilt shop here. Morning, Darcy. So we've got a whole bunch of customers here right now, and I'm fruit fly distracted. So I'm pressing this. What's that? I better be careful. I'll be burning myself. So I'm pressing my seams towards the print, and then I don't see very much of it behind my background fabric, which is not the end of the world. And sometimes it cannot be avoided, which I'll show you here in a moment anyways. But as much of it that I can press away from the background fabric, the better. Okay, so those two are now complete, and I am going to bring back my 4.5 inch background fabric and my 4.5 inch print. And I'm going to lay them out just like my other blocks. Aha, I got to make sure that the tiny triangles are pointing to center. Elle, would you just grab Alex there? Maybe she can help these ladies get some fabric cut. Still bossy even when she's on the camera. All right, so now I'm going to sew these two to each other and these two to each other, and we will be one step closer to finishing our block. Now don't forget to press or to stitch with your seam allowances up so that you can control the direction those are going. We'll do the same thing on this side. And I'm just going to prepare them so that when I grab them, they're just ready to go. Thank goodness for these 2 chairs. Do we have any questions? So the comment was that I should design a quilt and call it Fruit Fly. And I like that a lot, actually. It'll just be all over the bloody place. That's awesome. We'll just call it Bradie. Bat's eyelashes. Holy moly, it's busy this morning. Okay, so I'm holding my seams down so that they stay where I want them to, so things don't get twisted, although admittedly I'm not going to fix it if they do. Wow, you guys. Get using that fabric. So behind me, you can see my original almost houndstooth quilt, and I made that one several years ago out of some Tula Pinks and some Michael Millers that I just had in my stash. And I just love houndstooth fabric, and I wanted to kind of create a similar look. But when I got to the part here, this is why it's almost houndstooth. A typical houndstooth would have another triangle of print right here, and I just didn't have the dedication to go through and lay that all out and actually commit to that. So I threw out all those little squares. I didn't throw them out. Somewhere in my stash at home, I've still got a stack of 2.5-inch squares that are all the different prints in here. And I just said, no, I'm not going there. I'm almost done this quilt. I'll just put it all together. But then we decided we were going to do this program, and Sheila made up this one with the Yes Please fabrics by Riley Blake. So while this is an effort to get you using up what you've got in your own stash, if you're interested in a quilt kit for the Houndstooth quilt, you can find those on the website, and that is at sparrowquiltco.com. If you're just looking for the pattern, again, you're going to go to sparrowquiltco.com, and you can access the free download there so that you can follow along in the fun as well.
Someone named Charlene said as of February 7th, because of your tutelage, she has finished the Stay Centered and cut all the pieces for almost now.
So the reason I'm clapping, you probably cannot hear Landon. Charlene, you said?
Yeah.
Charlene has made our Stay Centered quilt, and she's cut out for the almost houndstooth. Cut out the fabrics. I'm so thrilled for you, Charlene. Send us a picture, please. We'd love to feature you on our Facebook page and on Instagram, and hopefully inspire others as well. Last week, I had a very good friend of mine named Kathy Strawson on the show, and she did a trunk show of sorts, and she showed us all of the quilts, a lot of the quilts that she has made in this century, meaning that she had started quilting before the year 2000, and that is such a source of inspiration. So if you have a good 90 minutes or so and you want to see Kathy's quilts, just go further back on the Facebook page there, and you can find that show where I had my good friend Kathy Strawson. If you, say, aren't on Facebook, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can watch it on the YouTube channel. You can also find all our videos on our Stash Busters page on the sparrowquiltco.com website. All right, so remember I mentioned earlier that there's sometimes that I do press towards the background fabric. This was one of those times, but I was storytelling right through all of that. So this time I pressed my seam towards my print, and I pressed this seam towards my white background fabric. So this seam is going that way, and this seam is going that way. And do you remember why that's a good thing? Because we can nest our seams, and that's going to eliminate bulk in our quilts. So now I'm just going to flip that one over onto this one, and I'm going to stitch these two little rows together. And as always, I'm going to use my trusty fork pins. So if you haven't seen a fork pin before, there it is. It's a U-shaped pin, and these little babies are sharp. Be careful. They'll puncture right into your little fingertips with no problem whatsoever. And there's 2 points, so both of them will get in there. And we don't want to be bleeding on our white fabric, do we? So it's our screen split. Hopefully you can see here how I've got this seam allowance going to the left, and this seam allowance is going to the right. So then that is going to make this seam that I'm about to sew nice and flat. There's not more bulk on one side versus the other. Now I'm going to insert that fork pin on either side of that seam, and just a quick little in and out. Now I can sew this seam.
Do a close-up of this.
Please. Yep.
Because the pin matches the blue.
Oh, yeah, that is really close in color, isn't it?
So it's just on either side.
I'll do another fabric next that's not so matchy-matchy to this. Hopefully you'll be able to see a little bit better. So when I am sewing this, it's going to be going under my machine like this, and I won't have a direct view of these seams on this side. So I'm just going to be very careful to make sure that this one doesn't flip over and go the opposite direction. And that will just create a funny bulk in my quilt that isn't life or death, but I still don't want it in there. So I am going to make sure that I pause and make sure that that's flat the way I want it. Okay, so today I am sewing on my little ever sewn Sparrow 20, and I do have my 1/4" foot on. Now I'm approaching my pin, so I'm going to slow down and I'm going to walk over it, like just slowly, so that if my needle were to hit the pin, it's going to do it at a slower speed, and then hopefully nothing breaks or flies up into my eyeball. There's just something really unattractive about having a needle in your eye. That's right, my safety goggles. Keep me safe. Oh, so my seam was trying to flip there a little bit. I just raised my presser foot and flattened it back out, put it back where I wanted it. Okay. So now pressing the seam at this point, it doesn't really matter what direction you go. I usually go towards the larger block of print.
Shelly wants to know if it's live now.
Hi, Shelly. Yes, this is live. These videos are all available later on the Facebook page, on the website at sparrowquiltco.com, and on YouTube. So regardless of where you're watching, I hope that you will like our Facebook page or subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also on Instagram, sparrowquiltco.com, and you can see all kinds of trouble that we're up to around here. All right, so I'm going to take this out of the way so you can see it a little bit better. Is that a good view there, Elle? There you can see my finished almost houndstooth block, and it's very simple, isn't it, guys? Could you see yourself making this? Even if you were a beginner, I think that you could do this quilt. So we'll set that one aside, and we will work on another color this time so that we can see it a little bit better. Although I do love that print. Does it remind you kind of like a meadow of wildflowers or something? All right, so we're starting fresh again, and what I need for this block is a 5" print. I've really located all this stuff conveniently for myself, haven't I? So I've got a 5" square of print, a 5" square of background, 4.5" square of print. Oh, background I mean. And then there's the 4.5 of print. And then I've got my 2.5" squares. So that's all we need for this block. What I'm going to do is set aside my 2.5s and my 4.5s for a moment. And I'm going to start with my white. And I'm going to draw that line down the back side. Fork pins are made by Clover. And I love any kind of Clover pin. Was there another question? Okay, so the question was what brand is the fork pins? Clover makes excellent, excellent products. I really, really do like their stuff. I guess I'm a pin snob. All right, so I got my corners, and I've just drawn that line from point to point. And now I can place that on my print. And now I'm going to sew a 1/4" seam on either side of this line that I've just marked. I typically dry iron. Unless something is just not submitting, then I will bring out the steam. I'm always concerned about shrinking my fabrics, and I'm going to admit right here and now that I do not pre-wash anything ever. There's one quilt that I did pre-wash, and it was because it was red and whites, and I just was a very new quilter. I wasn't sure about how those reds would behave beside the whites. I've never even washed that quilt, so it doesn't even matter. But in that one, sorry? No, it's that mystery quilt that, well, it's going to be a mystery quilt down the road. We might do that one for Stash Busters later in the year because it's a bit more advanced of a pattern, in my opinion. I didn't like the way those fabrics behaved after I washed them. I had to starch everything into submission. And so what I noticed over time is that when I steam my fabrics that are unwashed, that steam dampens them and it causes shrinkage, and then my blocks don't end up being the size I want them to be. So I typically use a dry iron for that reason. Unless there's creases in my fabric that are just too deep, then I will steam the crap out of them to try and get those wrinkles out. All right. So I am just sewing a 1/4 inch away from that line that I've marked. And then I'll turn it around and I'll sew on the other side as well. Geez, thread, come on. Behave. There we go. Hold those threads to the back again. Okay. I'm going to snip all that extra stuff off. I just really like to trim my threads as I go, and I find it's less work to do later. I don't want my threads showing underneath the white fabric. Picky. Just picky, I guess. You know, if that pink fray showed underneath the white and got quilted in, you would see it forever and it would probably bother you. So I always like to just trim any stray threads as I go, and then I don't have to worry about them haunting me later. Now, have you all shared this video? You're going to be entered to win an ergonomic rotary cutter. And I love mine. I love sitting while I cut. It just makes your job a little bit easier. Oh, this one is probably my favorite. Actually, that red and white one that I was just talking about, I really like that one too. I've got one up front. It's called Circle of Life, and it was designed by Jacqueline de Jong. And I started it way too early in my quilting career, and it took me forever to make that sucker. It was well beyond my skill level at the time, but I did persevere and I finished it. I did not complete the sawtooth borders, but that's another one of my favorites as well. It's the whole color wheel on a black background, and it's all mostly batiks. So that's one of my favorites as well. And then I've got a black and gold Bargello called Lightning Strikes that, again, took a long time to make. So that is one of my... I'm not going to say I have one favorite. It turns out I've got like 4 favorites. But yeah, I love my quilts. I'm quite a selfish quilter, I guess, is really what it comes down to. I make quilts because I love the fabrics. And occasionally I'll make a quilt because I want to give it to somebody, but I still own most of the quilts that I've made. I've given away a few, but I really admire these quilters that can just make and give so generously. I really admire that. Okay, so I'm pressing these towards the print. Oh, there's water in there today, so I guess I'm a bit of a liar today. I'm steamy today. But like I said, typically I don't have steam in there. Okay, so now I'm ready to trim up these little blocks. And we are aiming for 4.5 inches square. And I really do think it's worth it, guys, to do the squaring up. I've had quilts in my early quilting career that weren't as accurate because I didn't realize that you needed to trim every single little step. And although I'm just taking off like a 16th off of each side, that adds up over the course of a quilt, and it can make a huge difference in the accuracy. So I really do recommend doing your squaring up, because I think you'll find that it's worth it. I just moved my roundabout table L. Can they still see well?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I've got that 45-degree line on my ruler lined up with the 45-degree line on my piecing, and I'm just going to trim off the right side and the top. Oh, geez, I just forgot the whole point of the roundabout. So I can just spin this baby around. And that allows me to... Yeah, exactly. I've been trimming half square triangles at home too, and I don't have a roundabout at home. I guess I should take one home with me, shouldn't I? So I'm used to lifting and placing it back down. We get spoiled sometimes with these fancy tools. Okay. And any of the tools that you see me using in our videos, you can find them all at sparrowquiltco.com. The blue ruler I'm using today, I believe, is an 8. Yeah, it's an 8-inch square. And these come in 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And I think that's the biggest that we ship. I believe 18 and 24 are also an option, but you're going to have to come in and see me in person if you want those, because we don't like to ship those big guys. They are ridiculous to ship, the price, and finding a box that accommodates that big of a ruler is tough. It's just tough. Okay. So what would be the most useful size? It's so hard to say what would be the most useful size. Patterns all use different sizes of blocks. Probably your 12 would be your most versatile because it's pretty rare. Most quilt blocks are 12 inches or less, I would say. So with a 12, you could square anything that's smaller than that. I use the full line of them because, like, at this point, they're only 4.5. So I would typically use my 6-inch for this. I could only find my 8 this morning. Can you imagine not being able to find your quilting tools? Surely I'm organized and neat and tidy, right? So yes, if you're looking for one that's just kind of multi-purpose and very versatile, I would go with the 12. All right, so let's do this one more time, and then I'm going to switch to kind of a more chain style assembly line piecing. I'll mark a whole bunch of white squares. We'll match them up, and we'll go gangbusters. All right, my line is going from corner to corner. And I'm going to keep that on my block so it doesn't move. And I'll move away all my little fluff. Lift my ruler, spin my board. This is such a great thing to have if you're, say, going on retreat and you... I find at retreats you're frequently sharing an iron with lots of people in the room. So if you've got this cutting surface and pressing surface right in your station, A, you don't have to get up as much, and B, you don't have to share as much. You can tell I was an only child until I was 5. Eh? It's mine. All of it. It's mine. Oh, geez. I skewed that off a little bit. That's a good example of measure twice and cut once. I don't know how many times I've miscut something and then had to remake it to fix it up. Okay. So next I have to attach my 2.5-inch square up in these top corners. So I'm going to bring those little guys over and I'm going to draw a line down the center of them. And again, I'm just using a blue clover water erasable marker. Sometimes I'll use an air erasable marker. For this job, it doesn't really matter because the markings don't have to come out. If you're doing a project where the markings are going to show at some point, then an air erasable marker is good because then you don't have to go back and physically remove the markings. So that's really good if you are marking out quilting designs and it's going to show on the surface. Okay. So I'm going to line up my squares now with the outer corner of the print, and this time I will be sewing directly on that line. And get them both lined up so I can just take them over and get them stitched. There we go. So I've also been wanting to ask you guys if you have any special requests. I know that I promised you guys last week that I would show you how to do a diagonally pieced backing fabric. And I think what we've decided to do is make that its own little video. So you'll be able to find that soon as its own tutorial. And that way it's not just lost in the middle of some 90-minute video. So you can watch for that really soon. Okay, so I'm just sewing point to point right on that line. And then I'm going to trim away that outer little corner. And I'm saving up all my little corners. Someone volunteered to take them off my hands last week, so I will be going through and looking for you. And you will be getting a lovely little package of this. And you are welcome to it. Okay. Now we'll go back over to the trimming station. And now I'm just going to trim 1/4 inch outside of that line that I've just sewn, and then I will press that open. When I first began quilting, all I had was my 6 by 24 inch ruler, and I had to use that for every single job, and that is not always convenient. It's large and it is awkward. So getting some size of smaller rulers is very helpful so that you're not always working with those giant rulers that are better for cutting, say, yardage or that sort of thing. Okay, so now I'm going to press these with the print side up, and then when I open them up, the seam will be towards the print. How are we doing on time, Elle? 11:24? Okay, good. All right, everybody, just a reminder, if you want to be entered into the draw to win one of the ergonomic rotary cutters, you're going to share this video. Hopefully you know how to do that already, but if not, you're just going to look at the links below the video. You'll see like, comment, and share. And you're just going to go ahead and share this with your Facebook friends. Okay, so now I'm going to lay out my block, and I'm going to make sure that my 2 tiny triangles are pointing to the inside. Because believe it or not, I have messed that up before. And I'm also going to bring back my 4.5 inch square of print and my 4.5 inch square of background fabric. Yes.
When you draw a line from corner to corner, why do you always put a dot on each corner?
That's a great question. I'm going to get a background. Oh, sorry guys. Okay, so we'll set these aside for just a minute. When I'm drawing a line on the back of my fabric, if I just put the ruler from corner to corner, and I'm going to do one just to show you, it ends up slightly off center, especially because my marker's fat. Can they see that there, Elle? So this time my ruler went point to point. If I had touched the corner with my marker, then I would know that my ruler was slightly to the left, and then my marking line would be bang on down the center. But because I put my ruler down the center, my line is slightly off to the right-hand side. It's not the end of the world. It's one of those weird little control things that I have in my mind, but it just makes me feel better knowing that I've marked straight down the center. A 1/4 inch seam allowance isn't big. So over time, if we abuse our quilts and wash them a lot, you know, that little 1/4 inch seam can deteriorate over time, and it's cotton. There's not a lot there. So we want to make sure it is at least a 1/4 inch. If our line marking isn't accurate, then it's going to be even less than a 1/4 inch. So that's kind of why. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that helps.
You made any mini quilts? Those itty bitty pieces?
I have made... We had that, there is a Moda All-Stars book full of mini quilts, and we were kind of on a kick with those last year. That's kind of how my Stash Busters idea began. And then I realized we're making quilts that are 12 by 12 inches. This is not making a dent in anybody's stash. Ooh, Mini Marvels it's called. Yeah, here, we'll show it.
There's fabric.
Okay. All my leftovers. Oh, from that other quilt that I started and never finished. Imagine that. Sheila's pulling out fabric by the handful where I've stuffed it in a drawer and never come back. So this is the cabin skein. It is designed by Carrie Nelson of Moda, and that is the probably one of the few mini quilts that I've ever made. I did a mini quilt exchange many years ago, and that went to Michelle Foster of quiltinggallery.com, and I bet that little guy was about 12 inches square, and it was just a paper pieced New York Beauty or something, and then I quilted it on a domestic machine, so that was quite an accomplishment. I'm actually still really proud of that quilting. I go look at pictures every once in a while. But anyways, that is a really good book for minis if that is something that interests you. I personally feel like it's a lot of work for not a very big outcome. And someone suggested to me, why didn't I make all the quilts and then put them into one great big, as Victoria Finley Wolf puts it, everything but the kitchen sink sampler. And I pondered that for a bit. That's just not my favorite style of quilt. I'm picky, I guess. So I have never pursued that. Thank you, Landon. Maybe someday I will, when my scraps overcome me and I need to use them all up. All right, so I'm ready to put my block together now. I'm going to put this one onto that one, and I'm going to put this one onto this one. Now here I see kind of an opportunity to show you what I will do when I need to say fudge. Hopefully you guys can see this well. Can they see this block that I've laid out? So this is the side that I'm going to be stitching, and you can see that I can see a little bit, you can see that I can see, we can both see that there is a little bit of the pink fabric showing on the underside. My white isn't quite as big as it should be, so I will still keep my seam allowance accurate to my pink fabric on the bottom, and I will just let the white be slightly off. And I can see that my outer edges are lined up well. So that's my determining factor in deciding how far in I'm going to allow that to stay. So my 1/4 inch seam will be accurate on my pink fabric, but it'll look slightly less on my white fabric. But I'm going to allow that to stay that way, because if I shuffle that over, then my block will be short on the outside edge of it. I'd rather my block be short on the inside and slightly hidden or fudged than have to be not matching up properly on the outer edge. Does that make sense? I hope so. If not, please feel free to leave a little comment there, and I'll try to address that better. Then now I am going to piece these, and again my seams are up so that I can keep an eye on them and make sure that they go in the direction I want them to. So I really do hope that all of you will share your pictures with us of the quilts that you've completed from any of our patterns. Or you can share them on social media and just tag us, or send us an email telling us that you've shared it. We love to see the projects that you've created out of our patterns. Mm-hmm. Oh my. You know what? I don't even know. I have no idea. I started quilting in 2005. I'm going to have to sit down and see if I can come up with a list. A lot of them I don't have anymore. They've just either been worn out or given away as gifts, but I've never been good at keeping track of that sort of thing. I know lots of quilters who actually keep a photo album and they document everything and take a photo of each quilt, and I really admire that. I just don't have the, I think of it after I've given away the quilt, or, I just don't, doesn't occur to me to do that. So I love when people keep track of their stuff, because it really is a great thing to have, to be able to look back and say, geez, look at that quilt. Remember when I made this, or it had this fabric in it, or whatnot. A lot of my memories of quilts come back to me on Facebook memories. Every once in a while, Facebook will show you a memory that you posted from 8 years ago, and I'll just be like, oh, geez, I totally forgot about that quilt. Where is it even? Some of them are just long gone or too loved. They had to go into the recycle bin or whatever, but I still have quite a few lingering, lots here at the shop. But I'll see if I can come up with a list and try and share that number with you at some point in time. Okay. Ha! I did it wrong. So that's not going to work, clearly, nor will it work this way. Okay, so let's pick this baby out. I don't have a real picker here, but this is a fun opportunity to show you how I pick stitches, I guess. So when I do have to pick stitches, I usually just close up the piecing, and I will stick to one side of the seam, and I will just pick about every third stitch. And I really, really like a tool called Rainbow Snips for this job. They've got kind of a curved blade. I don't have them handy at the moment, so it just kind of lifts and gets under that stitch really easily. But we had a retreat here recently, and a little gal named Ellen was here, and she had the coolest stitch ripper. It was literally like a pair of clippers, like you would shave your boy's hair with, and you just kind of like separated an edge, and then you just like clippered right in between the seams, and let's just say I'm going to be getting me one of those. So that just comes apart really easily if I pick every third stitch on the other side. And then usually on this side there's just one solid string that you would pull on this side. You'll be left with little bits of fluff. everybody has their own way of picking stitches. I have picked a lot, oh there it is, a lot of quilts that have been done on the long arm and just maybe not happy with the tension or not happy with the design. So I've just had to come up with ways that was quick and easy in order to get that done. Now, you know, it's funny, when I saw this sitting here, I questioned myself. And someone had given me a tip the other day, might have even been you, Laura, about putting a pin in the side that they like to sew. So I think from now on, I should start doing that so that I can keep track of things with my fruit fly brain. Okay, so I'm just flattening that back out again because I had already pressed it. And I don't want to sew these little things back in, although it doesn't matter. But I'm going to pick them anyways. All right, so now I know that needs to be like that. That needs to be like that. I'll put this baby over here. And this time I'm going to sew up this side. Let's try and get it right this time, shall we? All right, everybody. We're probably coming into one of your last opportunities to make sure that you're in for the draw. So make sure that you share this video so that you can be entered for the awesome ergonomic rotary cutter. And hopefully you've been watching all along, but if you're just tuning in and you're interested in the almost houndstooth pattern, you're going to visit us at sparrowquiltco.com and you'll enter your email address there and we'll send you an email with the pattern attached. That way you can follow along in the fun as well and use up some of your stash. All right, should I look first to make sure? Yes. All right, so now I'm going to press this one towards the white. There we go. Okay. There, that's looking much better now, just like it's supposed to. So now I'm going to put this top row face down on the bottom row, and I'm going to use my fork pins to pin that center. All right. Okay, and just a reminder that I want to make sure one seam is going to the left and that the other seam is going to the right so that they just nest together really nicely, and that eliminates the bulk in our seams. Okay. Isn't it funny? I always think 90 minutes is so much time. I'm going to get so much done. And then last time, I think I only did 3 blocks. What did I get done today? 2. I thought it was 3. I guess I'm going to have to do some after-hours sewing, which is hardly a punishment. All right, there we are. Made it to the end of that one. And I really didn't pay much attention to my seams, but luckily they ended up going in the right directions. I didn't have any flipping troublemakers. I'm extra careful with these brutal little fork pins because if you get one in any part of your body, you're not going to be happy. Might be worse than stepping on Lego. Okay, so I'm going to press this seam towards the large block of print. And I always want to make sure that that seam is fully open. Come on now. If we don't make sure that it's fully open, then we're losing some of our measurements in that seam, and that's going to reduce our accuracy. One of these days I'm going to do another post again about thread weights and what type of thread weight we should be using when we're piecing. The thicker the thread you use, the more room it's going to take up in your seam allowance. So I prefer to use a 50 weight, but I did an actual experiment once upon a time where I used 4 different weights of thread and showed how it affected the size of my block in the end. So just keep that in mind when you're using a thicker thread. It's probably better to use a finer thread or maybe make your seam allowance narrower, and you know how I feel about that. So use a finer thread, and then you can keep your seam allowance that nice 1/4 inch that we're used to. All right, there she is, my finished almost houndstooth block. And now, just for fun, we're going to lay out a bunch of them. Landon had these all lined up in an Instagram post the other day, and I thought they were so pretty. But there was only 3, so I got to do it now that there's 4. Ooh, that makes a cool star. That'd be a neat layout too. What? My ostrich. There's my fabulous little ostrich. I just love her. She is so fancy. That's right. I kind of like that. That's a neat layout too.
And it would make another star with the whites.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. Let's see. This would be here. Yeah. Once we have more blocks, we'll have to lay it out just for fun to see how it looks. Oh, Cinema Smarty Pants over there. Also cool. Yes. Awesome. How are we doing for time, Miss? 11:45? Good. Okay. Well, I am just going to keep marking white squares then. And if you all have any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask them. This is your time. And we'll give you one more shot at sharing that video, and then we'll pick a winner in just a couple of minutes. Fork pins. What are fork pins is the question. I'll show you. So fork pins are made by Clover. I've not heard of any generic brands coming out yet, but I use them on everything. Anytime that I have intersecting seams that are coming together and I want them to match up perfectly, I will use fork pins. So it's a U-shaped pin with 2 very sharp pointy ends, and you would use that at any type of intersection. So here where the center of the block is coming together, I really want that to line up well. I don't want it to be off at all, so I will use those at this intersection, and they just come down nicely on either side of that seam, and it makes those 2 intersections just meet perfectly in the middle and give me the accuracy that I'm after. When I made my queen size Bargello, I used a fork pin at every single intersection, and it's time consuming. I'm not going to lie to you. It's there's no sense trying to make it seem like it's a quick and easy job. It takes time, but it's worth it if you want your projects to be accurate and precise. And I kind of feel after spending $20 a meter on fabric, I really want to put out the best quality product that I can. So I am willing to invest the time to use the fork pins and make sure that I get those nice square corners and intersections. Alrighty. So like I showed you earlier, I do put my ruler just slightly to the left, and I just put that dot there so that I can make sure I can meet or I can access my point. And that way my line is truly point to point versus being slightly off, and then I just make sure that my seam allowance is a bit more accurate. Accuracy seems to be the key with quilting. It's what's going to give us the best results. And best results are a good thing, especially when we're giving someone a gift. We want it to be as nice as we possibly can. So who ended up being the winner with the oldest fabric? Was it the 40 years old, or did someone have anything old? Ooh. I used to love going to garage sales and picking up old sewing patterns and old fabrics and stuff. And one time I got this 5 meters of raw silk, and I also had picked up some old sewing patterns, and one of them was just a like a 50s dress, and I thought this would be perfect for that silk. So I started this project and found that raw silk is one of the hardest things to work with. And so I was quite relieved that I had only paid $5 for that 5 meters of fabric, because I threw that sucker in the garbage. Clothing is not my strong suit, although I'm sure it would get better with practice. But any garments that I've ever made just screamed homemade, and I just could not either bring myself to wear it out of the house or force my children to wear it out of the house. So I stick to quilts because they don't have to fit a human body. For the most part, quilting cottons are quite stable. They don't fray too bad, though some brands are worse than others. I'm going to press that one that I just tossed aside there just because it's got a little wrinkle in it. Holy moly. That's awesome. I'd almost be scared to work with it, though. Like, I'd hate for it to deteriorate or fall apart. But just the fact that it's from a grandma makes it precious. Makes it worth keeping. Get out of there, wrinkle. So people will often ask me if I use fabric straight off the bolt. Yes, I do. Do I pre-wash my fabrics? No, I don't. I'll use backing fabrics right off the bolt all the time. Yeah. Landon's pointing out when you put them on the frame, you're smoothing it out and it's rolling really nice and tight, which makes it kind of flatten out. If the creases are really deep on there, I will spritz it with some water and let it hang overnight, just over the long arm frame, and the wrinkles will like magically just kind of hang out. But that's something you want to do overnight. And you also would want to do that with your batting that's been, you know, sometimes you can buy batting in a bag and it's all rolled up and those creases are really deep. So you can like lay that out over a railing or some large area and just the wrinkles will just hang out overnight, especially if you spritz it with just a little bit of water. It's like magic.
Laura says she used to make her husband's cowboy clothes and had to start quilting, and he likes the flat projects.
Yeah. This thing right here just makes my stomach hurt thinking about it. And I'm always so disappointed when, well, at least I was with that raw silk project. I had just had a baby and I made it to what my measurements were supposed to be. Very disheartening to try and wriggle myself into that outfit. It's part of the reason it went into the trash. This is never going to fit. Okay, yes, I'm dramatic. All right. So guys, just a reminder, if there's any sort of project you would like to see, go ahead and leave me a comment. I'd love to hear your suggestions. And if you've made any of our projects, please send us a picture or tag us on social media. We'd love to see them and feature you on our social media as well. And do you think it's time for us to choose a winner for the ergonomic rotary cutter, Miss L? Okay.
A lot of agreement. Like, I made garments before. That's why I love it.
No more human bodies. Maxine O'Donnell is the winner of our ergonomic rotary cutter. Now, Maxine, what I need from you is to please send us a private message. Please don't post your address and personal information on the feed here. Privately message us and send us your email, your phone number, and your shipping address, and we will get one of these babies in the mail to you. Now, just a reminder, guys, we will be back on Friday at 10:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and we stream live Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 10:30. And if you want to see our prior episodes, please visit us at sparrowquiltco.com. You're going to look for the Stash Busters page, and you'll be able to see all the prior videos that we've done. And you can find us on YouTube, and you can find us on Facebook as well. Are we at noon yet? 11:52. All right. Well, I'm going to keep taking comments and questions for a couple more minutes. And congratulations, Maxine. I think you'll love your rotary cutter just like I do. Oh, yes, please let us know. That's an important detail. So Sheila is over here to my left, and she's saying make sure that she indicates right or left, because this is a right-handed cutter, but it's also available in the left-handed version, and that would be blue. So Maxine, let us know. Are you a righty or a lefty? Wow, fabric that's 100 years old. You'd almost have to do something like that suits the era of the fabric. You know, you wouldn't want to maybe do something too modern. Although maybe it would be cool. This would probably still be cool in like feed sack fabrics or 30s fabrics or whatever.
I like to do or think about doing the opposite.
Yeah.
You take like a really traditional design and then you
Yep. Delanne is just suggesting taking a modern design. Did you say modern design? Modern fabric and doing a traditional design. So we could do it the other way as well. You could take a traditional fabric and do it in a modern design. There's no rules. I pardon you from all the rules. Do what you want. It's your fabric. You bought it. You've invested the time. Don't let the quilt police rain on your parade. So the suggestion is a pattern done with pre-cuts would be good. And I agree. I love pre-cuts. Love them, love them, love them. In fact, that's probably been my biggest weakness over the years is pre-cuts. The big part of my collection is fat quarter bundles, charm packs, jelly rolls. I love them. I love a coordinating line of fabric. I literally cannot mess that up. It's like, for me, quilting for dummies. You cannot mess this up. But I'm also learning that scrappy works too. And so I'm learning to let go of that need to work with an entire line of fabric, although that is what I'm doing today. And I don't think I mentioned it, but this line of fabric that we're using today is called Curiosities. The designer is Amanda Herring, and that is for Riley Blake. Riley Blake is kind of my current love. But let's be honest, don't we love all fabrics? It's pretty rare I'll say no to fabric. All right. So a pattern with pre-cuts, hey? Okay. Ooh. So Landon's just saying that she does not like doing this part, the marking. And, you know, another way to do it, you could just fold it in half and just kind of finger crease it. So the question at the moment is, what's your least favorite part about quilting? And I'm guessing that Landon's least favorite part is marking. But we've all got our little things. I've admitted in the past that I do not like binding. I consider it to be optional. They usually get bound when they need to be washed. But I'm trying to get better. And I've got lots of help now, so I often will get someone around here to help me out with the binding, which works too. Oh, yes, flying geese is in the works. We will definitely bringing in some flying geese. And I've got one in my brain too for 2.5-inch strips, so I'm going to start thinking about 5-inch squares as well. Fat quarters aren't as much of a pre-cut, I'm going to say, because they're quite versatile. You can chop them up into whatever you want, but those 2.5-inch squares and those 5-inch squares, even the mini charms that are 2.5, what do you do with those little suckers? You need like 4 packs of them to do anything decent size, so that can be a challenge too. In fact, we did our row by row program last summer with 2.5-inch squares just because I had like a ton of them and we needed to use them up. But what's good about those is you, what's that? Yeah, they're gone. We wiped them out, but that was the idea.
Share the video. Can you clarify the rules of entering? You need to share it once.
Yeah. So, right. So in order to be entered for any of the prize draws, we just ask that you share the video, and then we can see who's all shared. And so Lannon just clicks this little link, and it shows her everybody that shared the video, and then she just randomly selects one of you off of that list. So yes, you just have to share the video, and that will enter you into the draw for the prizes that we give away during each video. And we give a prize, at least one prize away each and every time we have a video. So Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, 10:30 a.m. Tune in and you share that live video, and then you'll be entered into the draw. Any other questions? Ooh, least favorite parts, borders. Yeah, that's probably my second least favorite part is borders. You have to be so precise. So that's actually probably a good tutorial to have too, is maybe borders or something where I can show you guys little tips and tricks. My mouth kind of twitched there. Couldn't even help it. Just ways to keep your borders accurate, because there are ways to just slap your borders on and then you end up with this waviness. And then there's ways to make sure that your quilt is going to hang nice and square and turn out the best possible way. Is there a pattern for this? Yes. So the question is there a pattern that can be printed for the Almost Houndstooth? What you're going to do is go to sparrowquiltco.com. You're going to click on my face. I'm right there on the main page, and that takes you to a new page. You're going to enter your email address, and then we'll reply with the pattern attached to an email. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I really do enjoy your comments and your questions, and I hope you will continue to join us. We'll see you back here on Friday at 10:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Aside from that, go to sparrowquiltco.com and watch all of the Stash Buster videos. Watch us on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, and make sure you like us on Facebook and on Instagram. All right, everybody. Take care, and I will see you all on Friday. Bye for now.